Good evening, everyone, to the Finance Committee meeting for the budget presentation from the head of the departments. So to the September 29, 2020. And tomorrow we are going to have a continuation of the meeting for the second half. So the first thing in our agenda is to call to order. So do we have quorum for the Finance Committee meeting?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you. Next in our agenda is the public appearances for non-agenda items. Do we have anyone in the chamber or in the Zoom chat?
No one in the chamber, no one on chat.
Okay, thank you. So next, we move to the department presentation and the 2021 budget presentation schedule. And before we go to the mayor, I will ask the Department of Finance, Misty Dodge, to do an introduction about how the budget process works so people in the public have an idea how this process is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julia. So first, thank you to everybody that's here tonight. So the Finance Committee, of course, all the department heads that are scheduled for tonight, and then also all the council members that are here for this special Finance Committee meeting. I, of course, think the budget is one of the most important things that we do, and this information gathering stage is really an important part of that, because you can't make a good priority decision without getting all the information that you need to make that decision. So I want to share my screen quick and show you and the public where to find the budget document. So this is the City of Fitchburg main website page. So if you go to Government and then Finance under Departments, and then this Financial Report, Records and Reports, and the budget is right here on the top. So right now we're talking about the mayor's proposed budget for 2021. The schedule is also out here if you're interested in the rest of the process going forward. And at the end of tomorrow, I'll kind of summarize those next steps for you guys too. But then if you also wanted to see the final adopted budget for last year or this year, and then also 2019, that's also available out there. So then going to the actual document. So this is the cover page. The easiest way I found to navigate this document is to use the bookmarks. So if you open it up over here on the PDF, all the blue ones are kind of the main points that will go through each of the departments. The mayor's letter is an important one to read, where all the numbers are. And then all of the red bookmarks are connected to the new staffing proposals. So you'll be able to get around that way as well. And then the presentations, both tonight and tomorrow, should be going through the same order as this book. So those of you that are at home or watching along, I'll share my screen for it. So you're welcome to just watch that as we go through, or you could scroll through the document yourself. And so some of the important things I wanted to point out is the levy limit calculation. So you'll see throughout a variety of the summaries, there's a lot of purple highlighting. Those purple highlighted numbers are estimates at this point. Big things that we don't know, one is the 2020 debt issuance. We haven't done that yet. It'll be coming up shortly though. So in the omnibus amendment, at the end of the process, I'll include an adjustment based on the actual debt that we issue and the payments that need to be made. So all of those numbers at this point are highlighted purple, or anything that those numbers affect, because it's an estimate. The other big thing that's outstanding is the assessed value. So we never know it at this point yet because the final one's not released for about a month still from the Department of Revenue. But this year in particular, we're a little behind in a normal schedule. We're still going through that board of review process. So these estimates are even more of an estimate than what they would be other years. So when we talk about assessed value tax rates and what the assessed value is in total, all of that stuff, none of those are updated. At this point, it's just my estimate of where I think we'll be. So that's important as you go through this too. So then levy limits is our big constraint, as we talked about during that committee of the whole meeting I was at a couple of months ago now. So page 10 has the levy limit calculation on it. So you can see exactly how that's calculated and how I get to this number. Again, purple being because the debt service number is not final yet, but that is exempt more or less from the levy limit calculation. So that's not a concern. But this orange number here in the bottom corner is something to pay attention to. So the mayor's proposed budget has $517 available of levy limit capacity. And what that means to me is that as you're thinking about amendments, and if you want to put any new initiative in that's property tax funded, another thing will have to be deprioritized or unfunded in order to pay for it. So if you remember, levy limits is not an option. We have to comply with levy limits, or we can go to referendum, but it's frankly too late to go to referendum at this point. So we'll need to make sure that we stick within that levy amount. There's also the expenditure restraint calculation in here. This is a different formula. This is the one that gives us money from the state, about $600,000, as long as we comply. Bottom right corner-ish, again, we have quite a bit of capacity in this calculation, so I'm not worried about that. Levy limits really is our constraint. And in the omnibus amendment, I will also put through something that will keep that capacity available to us for future years so that we don't lose it. So we'll make sure to tie that up at the end of the process. So tonight, what the department heads are going to focus on is really the executive summaries and then their new proposals, and then they'll open it up for whatever questions you guys have. And again, this is the information gathering stage, so ask as many questions as you have. If after today you still have questions, definitely reach out to the department heads and make sure that you have enough information to make good decisions. So on the executive summary, we'll use the senior center as an example. This is kind of a nice 2 to 3 page summary of what's going on in the department. We'll focus just on the significant accomplishments and the new initiatives. And then there's a significant changes section. So we had to use a little bit of judgment here because significant is in the eyes of the beholder, but we always included anytime there was a fee change, anytime we thought there was some sort of a policy directive that you might want us to point out that particular thing. And then obviously anytime there's a big dollar amount, it would be pointed out for you here. So these executive summaries are a great place to go to get some good information about what's included and what's not. And then there's new staffing proposals, which look like this. Again, those are all the red font bookmarks throughout the document. And if you look at them in the top right corner, you can tell whether it was included or if it was not included in the mayor's budget. So if you're going through it this way, that's a great place to tell if it was or was not. And then there's also the summary towards the beginning. And in here, you can also tell by looking at this orange column, if it's zeros, it was not included. And the ones with numbers, these were included. So that's another place to go to look to see if those were in there. Because how our process works is if it's a new staffing initiative, the departments have to fill out that separate form and go through that extra step in order to get that approved. So that is all I have as far as the mechanics. I guess, does anybody have any questions for me before we head to the mayor's introduction?
Any question? Okay, I don't see any questions. So, okay, so now the mayor is gonna do his presentation. Aaron?
All right, thank you, and thanks for everyone who was able to make it today. This is what I think is the most important thing that we do as a council. You know, this is a big chunk of money. It impacts everyone in the city, and it's a challenge. It was a challenge last year. It was a bigger challenge this year, and I think it's going to be even a bigger challenge next year, especially with so many unknowns with things like COVID happening. Misty talked about some of the constraints that we have on the budget already. Some of the things that are in here, we talked a lot about Fact TV earlier this year. I do have in here funding in using our levy, if you will, to fund that. It's not everything that gets spent for Fact TV. The capital projects are not in here at this point, but it is such a critical service, especially you've seen that during the pandemic. They are critical to providing all the meetings for the city. And so we don't want those structural deficits. Misty hates those. And this is a structural deficit, at least until this year. And so it is eliminating something that has been kind of out there for a while. And so I was happy to be able to start to solve that. Another big thing on here is the commitment to our employees. This has been an extremely challenging year. And I see it every time I walk into City Hall, how hard people are working and how they're going above and beyond to continue providing great service to the people who live in this city, even through this pandemic. So I wanted to make sure that we're supporting them. We don't have mass furloughs. There's not wage freezes in here. And I think it's important to let staff know that thank you for all the work that you've been doing this year. I can go through every single department in the city and talk about the great things that they've done this year. Talk a little bit about Town of Madison coming up. And frankly, we need like 7 positions in the next 2 to 3 years as we get the Town of Madison and all the people who live and work in that area. I'm going to come out with something later this year that talks about that. I don't have many. I have essentially 2 positions, but really 1 position in our budget additional this year. And we need a lot more than that. When you look at the extra roads we have to plow, when you look at the businesses that we have to serve, we have overworked departments already, and some of them are going to be at a breaking point at that point in time. There are some things that I think are great ideas that we had adopted in the CIP that I had to take out, unfortunately, to make this work. Assessing vehicle was in there, some maintenance equipment for our fleet, which I think is also really important, but I just couldn't do that. The hybrid vehicles, kind of premium, if you will, I did take that out. We are going to, though, still look at those options, and I've talked to staff about that, is that even though the money's not in there, let's at least look at that option when we do replace vehicles and see if it is a possibility. We actually just did that with the K9 vehicle that we're replacing this fall. And I know Chief Breckland might touch on that. It's really talking about next year, so maybe that's a future thing. But I know that Chief Breckland looked at that option, and it just didn't quite work this year. It is something that is getting close, but we are looking at those. The Teen Center is another one. We talked a little bit about debt and funding, and debt is a serious issue right now, and so it is pushed back. It's not removed, it's pushed back, and I think there's a lot more planning that we can do around that to make sure that it's can happen in the future. Much like we've done with the hub, we've done a lot of planning with the hub, and I don't want the Teen Center to jump ahead of the hub. I don't think that's fair to the hub either. The neighborhood hub, the funding to essentially fill out the park is in here. I did keep all that. It was either $40,000 or $50,000 in there for operating costs. I don't know if there's a staff person, what that is. I did remove that, but in terms of building out the park, that money is in there still, and I think that's important to build that park out. It's a neighborhood that can use more park space and more really neat, interesting park space. So that is still in here. The drone, again, just looking for projects that are good, but need to save some money. That is in there. The 2 projects I talked about, one is a senior center position, which is really a net zero impact on our budget. They had to get revenue from the exercise classes that this person does, and that offsets the cost. The one position I did add was in public works, and part of the reason I was able to do this is because only 1/3 of the cost of this position is paid for by property taxes. The stormwater rates will pay for 2/3 of this because they will do a lot of work with our different utilities. And the public works was my #1 priority. Frankly, if I could have had a second position, that might have been in public works too. You see all the construction projects and all the roads from all these neighborhoods happening. Public works has been pretty overwhelmed. It's a huge department. You got to think about the engineering and the streets, and they even do some of the park maintenance. So it's a huge department, and they're just going to get more and more stressed, especially as we add Town of Madison. We are, like I mentioned, working on some of the Town of Madison. I think we're going to have this committee of the whole coming up in January, maybe, talking about Town of Madison some more. A few things we did with COVID, we're not doing any out-of-state travel right now, so I did remove any training for out-of-state training for this year. It does create a hole in the budget that we hopefully in 2022 will be able to start doing, but that is money that we will have to try and find in the future. As of now, Metro Transit, again, we're keeping that flat and same as what we paid for this year. And so we'll work with them to figure out how that works. But, as I said in the one meeting, that they're using CARES funding to cover the increased costs this year. 2022, that is going to be almost doubled though from what it is right now. And so, like we talked about, we're looking at options there. And we still don't really know what the long-term impact of COVID is. I mean, we've seen it a little bit. We've been able to weather it pretty good, but it's not going away, unfortunately. It's getting worse right now. And so, who really knows what 2021 will hold in terms of COVID? So ultimately, I think that, I'm interested in hearing thoughts, ideas. There's a lot of projects that I couldn't put in here that are great projects and I would love to be able to do, but we do have the restrictions that we have. And I do want to continue to make Fitchburg affordable, and, taxes are a big piece of that. And you want to be able to have people afford to stay here and live here. And so, yeah, affordability, that's part of it. And so that's really all I have for now. And I don't know if you want questions now, but as people present, please ask them questions as well. Because this is really, yes, I put out the first draft, but it's our budget, not just my budget.
So I want to ask you a question, Mayor. Can you give us what is your vision for the next 2 years? So where should we invest our money?
I think there's a few things. One is in staff as we take over town of Madison, that's going to add a lot of stress. And frankly, I see another big piece where we're not putting the money in that we need to is in our infrastructure. There's a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of streets in this community that are not getting fixed as soon as they should. And that is something that continues to get worse and worse. I think that we have things in here that are important, like the neighborhood hub and filling out that park. And so that's in here. So that's, a great piece as well. But as we continue to grow as a city, we're not keeping up right now with with kind of our general maintenance, if you will. And that concerns me a lot. But, the town of Madison is going to be a huge thing in a couple of years. And that's really kind of what we need to focus on, because it's going to be another neighborhood with a lot of needs. There's a lot of apartments over there. Some of them are more affordable, and there's been, I think, a lot of police calls from what we hear in that area. So there's also a lot of senior housing, which is great, but that's going to put more stress on the senior center. And I know Joe might talk about that. And that's one of the areas where I see needing at least one more person in the next couple of years, because there is a lot of seniors that live over in town of Madison, and there's more senior housing coming. The High Line opened this year. We approved another project for senior housing. And so, just continue to provide the great services that we do.
Okay. But when we talk about the town of Madison, we also need to take no as an expense, because we are going to receive income. We are going to receive. It's not about all the expenses, because we are receiving some, revenues. They are paying taxes too. So.
We will get some revenue, but the projections are that it's not going to cover the expense.
So when we are going to be those projections, because this is something that maybe the council, we need to be more active, because for the last 5 years that I have been in the council, we talk about the town of Madison, but so far, I know that we need to, update the council, what is coming, what are the cities working, and then, because so far we don't have any idea. I know that you guys are having meeting, but we don't have any report. So that one, I will see something that we would like to see. And my other question, maybe this one is for Misty, because I know this is, since we need to know that, because it's going to affect this budget, and thinking about the 22 budget is, in the contract, in the contract between the three municipalities in the town of Madison, it mentioned that the city has to do like a severance package to the employees of the town of Madison. So do you know how much is going to be that part for the city of Fitchburg? Do you know how it's going to be allocated to each of the, between Madison and Fitchburg? Do you have any idea about that?
I guess I would say that we're getting a little off topic, because it's not as part of the 2021 budget, but there's some information that we do plan on providing. I think we have a committee of the whole set up, and we are working with the city of Madison to figure out what some of those costs are. So that is future discussions that we need to start having soon, and I know staff is working on that, but I don't want to get off track right now.
No, I understand, but I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna put amendment, I'm gonna bring things, so I need to know what I need to move to 2020 or what I need to remove from 2020. So, and I need to know, I would like to know if maybe you cannot give us that, if you don't have the answer now, but maybe in the future meetings, if you can give us an update about, because, the next committee of the whole that we are gonna discuss this topic is gonna be January 21, so, so.
Mayor, I can jump in if I could quickly.
Sure.
Julia?
Yes.
Yeah, as the mayor noted, we are having ongoing meetings with the city of Madison, and we're getting all of that information now and plan on presenting it to you in January. We don't know how many people will be on board when the town is eliminated and we take over when it's detached and we annex it. So we don't know that number right now, but we're working hard to get it because we just found out a couple of months ago that fire and EMS, it dissolved in the town and it's being contracted now with the city of Madison effective November 1. So there's a lot of moving parts, and that's what we're trying to get a grip on before we come to you with poor estimates.
Okay, thank you. So, any other question for the mayor?
I think Dorothy had one.
Dorothy, do you have a question?
Yeah, what I wanted to ask either the mayor or Misty, and this is probably information to gather and provide in the future. I'm interested in knowing what the historical picture for highway funding or roadway funding has been from state and federal, whether we're getting money from them to the degree that we have in the past, or whether that's being cut down significantly, and how that's impacting our ability to take care of our streets. I'd like probably a 10 to 15 year historical perspective on that.
I believe, I remember right, Misty, our conversations is that one of our concerns for 2021, a number we don't have, is what our transportation funding is going to be. And we are concerned that it's going to go down because there's less gas tax being collected because people are driving less. I think that's one of the main funds of that. But that's one of the unknowns we have in the budget, and actually a concern that it could come in below what it was in the past. Hopefully they're able to keep it flat, but if it goes down, we got to find somewhere to cut, essentially.
And so, Dorothy, there is the 5-year history is in this document. I can point that out when it gets to my section, but I can put together really easily a 10 to 15 year history, assuming you mean that general transportation aid, that separate aid that we get from the state specifically for transportation.
Correct, to help us with our road work.
Yep, I can get that put together real easy.
Appreciate it, thanks.
Any other question? Okay, so thank you, Mayor. So now we are moving to the presentation from the head of the department. And the first presentation is from legal. So we have with us Valerie Sisman, the city attorney. So Valerie.
Yes, thank you, Julia. Good evening, everybody. As you know, I'm Valerie Zisman. I'm the city attorney. I am a department of one, so my staffing summary is pretty short. I don't have any new staffing proposals, so I intend to remain the only city attorney. Historically, that's been the case, I think, for about a decade now. And prior to that, the city had only outside legal services prior to having an in-house city attorney. I guess I'll keep it fairly brief and just give you an opportunity to ask some questions, but I don't, as I mentioned, I don't have any new staffing proposals. My significant change that's included in the executive summary is that I have requested a $5,000 increase in the outside legal to help address the cost of labor counsel. And that is due to increased ongoing union-related matters in police and fire departments, and also updating our personnel policies, which a number of them have been outdated, and so some of those costs have been going up as well. So $5,000 is my significant budget change. It is fairly significant, as I try to keep, in the sense that I try to keep as much work in-house as I can, and that includes handling all of our municipal court prosecutions in-house to date, including things that end up in circuit court on appeal. But it is a significant change in terms of my outside legal budget. That said, I would say that given the billing rates of outside attorneys, it isn't a whole lot of hours in terms of the billing rates. So I do have, just as a brief summary of some of the significant accomplishments that I've had this year. I've been assisting with the tax assessment litigation that has been brought by the city by Hy-Vee grocery store. I'm also assisting with the Board of Review and legal questions that arise with that. I've assisted with union negotiations earlier in the year with the fire department or the fire union. And of course, I've been assisting the city with the COVID-19 emergency and all of the changes that has brought to us as far as our blended meetings that allow us to have video participation and assisting with the keeping track of all of the changing directives from the state as well as the public health Madison-Dane County directives and orders that have come out. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. And that's all I have tonight.
Question for Valerie? I have a question. So you mentioned that you had to increase the $5,000, but we are not going to have any union contracts in 2021, isn't it?
We don't have any negotiations for union contracts, although, but we do have an ongoing issues but questions that arise as far as employees of unions. So anytime there's a potential for a union dispute, our labor council gets involved in that, as well as updates to any significant updates to the personnel policies. We have labor and employment council that has served in that position, I think, for possibly 20 years or more, certainly before my time.
Okay, any question? Any other question? Okay, thank you, Valerie.
That's a question.
Gabriella has a hand up.
Oh, I don't see her. Can you, okay, one question. If you have a question, I am monitoring the chat. Can you can you write in the chat that you have a question so I can call you, because I cannot see you now. Okay, so Gabriela, do you have a question?
Yes, and this is more for Misty, but I'm just curious about the structure of the financial summary. So those personnel cost increases, is most of that reflecting a cost of living adjustment?
So it would be a variety of things. So cost of living adjustment is included in there. The HR department will talk about that. But there's also health insurance increases, the retirement plans, all of that stuff would be in that same line. So it's wages and benefits.
Great. And did we see a large increase in healthcare or dental costs?
So, yep, dental, I believe, was 5%. Healthcare was between 7.5% and 8%, depending on the plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question, Misty. So why the negotiation for the contract unions for, in this, our case, the fire department and the police should come in from the legal? Why we don't have an allocation? They should allocate some money to cover part of those expenses.
So all three of those are property tax funded. So whichever bucket or budget you take it out of, it's still property tax funded. So you like to keep all of the legal costs consolidated, because Valerie's the one that coordinates those contracts and is responsible for that budget. But yes, the other departments obviously contribute towards driving the need for that budget.
Okay. Thank you. Any other question for Valerie?
And Julia, if I may just add something.
Yeah.
It's been raised that our union contracts with both the police and the fire union expire at the end of 2021, so that we will be starting union negotiations sometime in 2021. However, the large expense that we may need to budget for most likely be incurred in 2022, and that really only happens in the event that we have a significant impasse in terms of our negotiations. Usually we try to handle them internally as an administrative team. And if there are issues, those generally tend to rise toward the following year in terms of the extra costs that we would have to pay to Labor and Employment Council.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Valerie. So now we move to the next presentation, Human Resources. We have the manager, Sarah Olson with us. So, Sarah?
Yeah, hi. Before I get started, I just saw Randy pop up a question in chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Randy. Okay. Randy?
Quite all right. Yes, that's quite all right. It's just the question I have is it typical that both union and or I should say fire and police contracts expire at the same time or close to the same time? Are we in negotiations at both fire and police at the same time, I guess? Is it, it just sounds like a tremendous amount of work on maybe your behalf or HR.
Yeah, we do typically, I hope it's okay if I answer this, but yeah, we do typically negotiate both at the same time. A lot of times what police are going to be getting in their contract, fire is also interested in looking at. So we try to have some of that consistency. So it works out pretty well to have it in the same year.
I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, good evening, Council. I'm Sarah Olson, HR Manager. Valerie talked about those policies, and we really tapped into her her legal fees and the outside employment attorney for the 3 policies that you see in front of you today. The chaplaincy program, the telecommuting policy and procedure, and our employee resource group. All 3 policies super important, brand new to the city, and I just want to thank our personnel committee and Pat for being behind these. Our chaplaincy program, we've got 2 unpaid volunteer chaplains that are here to support all of our city staff. Our telecommuting policy allows our employees to be able to work from home at a time during a pandemic and continue operations. In our employee resource group, this is a really exciting group of about 13 individuals from all across the city who have a deep passion for diversity and inclusion. We've got members from police and fire, a number of different departments. We have agendas, we have minutes, so if you're at all interested in just viewing what we talk about, please let me know. I'm happy to share those. We also have a meeting next week, so if you're interested in just popping in and sitting in, feel free. COVID was another big, brand new thing for us, totally unplanned as for everybody else. But from an HR standpoint, that involves us having to create brand new policies. Again, thanks to Valerie's help. Also brand new application forms. There's a lot of work with employees right now. HR is kind of that first point of contact along with their manager when they get COVID or if they have a family member that has COVID. So we're that liaison between payroll and the employees. So, and we also meet weekly to just talk about different COVID questions and concerns. So it's been a big part of HR this year. New initiatives for 2021, we're really super excited to continue on with our diversity and inclusion ERG. We are talking about things like educating our ERG members on interviewing best practices and bias training so that they can actually be tapped into to sit on interview panels. We have a current police officer recruitment process going on right now, and we actually have 2 ERG members. Actually, a lot of the ERG members have expressed interest, but we will have 2 members be able to assist, one on the interview panels and one on the application review process. So thank you, Chief Brecklin, for being behind that. A lot of other things too. We want to, spread awareness. So we're talking about, whether it's a biweekly or monthly email that talks about different trainings or opportunities, or hey, it's Hispanic Heritage Month, or it's Pride Month. Making sure that we're kind of getting people outside of their bubble and talking about things and creating a more inclusive work environment. Part of that is inviting, what I would like to do is invite Step Up Equity Matters. It's the local organization that does a phenomenal job on having meaningful discussions around equity and bias. They have this online bias. It's called Uprooting Bias. It's a 9-week challenge, and it would be 1 email sent to all staff, and it takes about 5 to 15, more like 5 to 10 minutes, and it's a variety of video clips, the Harvard implicit bias test, a number of different exercises to get employees thinking about what are their biases. What do they see here at the city of Fitchburg? So you can take the Uprooting Online Bias for free on their site. But if you pay as an organization, you actually get all of those anonymous responses so that you can actually gauge the temperature of our work culture and see where we have some work to be done, because you get those responses back. So that's just a couple of things that we're working on for 2021. And then as we move into 2021 for budget changes, we are proposing a 2% cost of living adjustment for our permanent non-represented employees. And this is really to be in line with our represented staff that are already going to be receiving that 2%. Also, if you look at Middleton, Sun Prairie, Verona, those are our comparable communities. They're also proposing a cost of living adjustment anywhere between 1.5% to 3%. So I also was part of a Wisconsin Public Employer wage survey for 2021, and a majority of the municipalities are offering a cost of living adjustment in 2021. So I'd be happy to share a listing of what those are if anyone's interested. And then also a 1% pay for performance. This is identical to what it is this year, but as you know, we have a merit-based system for our non-represented employees. So how our non-reps move through the pay plan is based on how well they perform in their jobs. So if we don't have a merit increase, they just stay where they are. So it kind of defeats the purpose of a merit-based system. And then, as you know, we've been talking about election inspectors and chiefs and our pay rate being particularly low, especially compared to our comparable Verona, Middleton, Sun Prairie. So moving from the 8 to 10 to 10 to 12, just to make sure that we can recruit and that we're competitive is really important. And then you're going to see something on here called NeoGov Single Sign-On. SSO integration allows for employees to sign on to a software program using their network username and password. This makes it a lot easier for employees. It's something we actually already implemented last year, and IT covered the cost. They covered actually $1,000, which is the annual fee, and then they even fronted the SSO integration application fee, but now it's something HR needs to have in their budget. Because what NeoGov is it's our software program for performance evaluations, onboarding, our HR intranet. So it's really important that employees can easily get into the system. It's been working wonderfully. So that's what the 1,000 is for. And then just a quick last few points. Our employee assistance program, they had a really low total number of employees that we had. I don't know if it looks like it maybe hasn't been updated for about 5 years. So they ask for a total employee account, and then I give them the total active employees, and basically we pay based on active employee and administrative costs for our employee assistance program. Our EAP, again, is a free benefit for employees and their families. Very important, to work with life issues and help people through a number of different, different things. So that's the increase why we have that there. The increase for task, which is our flexible spending account, is based on the number of users. We pay an administrative fee per user. And so we actually, we had some more people on, so we're trying to account for that increase in users and our flexible spending. And then, of course, the out-of-state conference travel was taken out. And then I was really excited to see the mayor behind the Uprooting Bias online challenge. Again, this will give us all the anonymous responses for the city of Fitchburg employees on where they see maybe some potential concerns on racial equity and social justice, issues with our employees, what kind of biases already exist with our employees, and kind of give us a feel for what we can do next. I see the ERG and Step Up Equity Matters working really close together. And then CIVMIC also provides some diversity inclusion, and they're actually looking at some offerings. They just sent out a free Facing Bias webinar for all staff. So Pat had suggested that we make that mandatory for all department heads. And so we are starting to take more steps to having more mandated bias training for all staff. So really excited. I can't wait hopefully this gets adopted, and I can't wait to bring in some outside experts in that. So yeah, so that is my budget for 2021.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. All of those, you mentioned about a couple of, initiative about bias. Why don't why do you send the invite also to the elders? Because, well, because we are employee of the city too, and, we should be part of those initiatives too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see any reason we couldn't. The ERG, anyone can attend, even if a council member wanted to join as employee resource group. You're right. I mean, I think sometimes I send out emails to all staff, and it's just the mayor and council are a separate user group. So I don't see any reason why, the free webinar with CIVMIC about facing bias, that would be something great we could send out, that you already probably have a CIVMIC login. So yeah, we can definitely start sharing those opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Gabriela, and then Dorothy.
I just wanted to check in. I know the chaplaincy program is one of the accomplishments for the year, and I know that there's no salary associated with that, but have we been able to hire a couple of chaplains? I know we were looking to hire more than one.
Yeah, we did. We have two that came on. Susie Jenin, who's been with us for a while, and then David and Joe, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, David is another one. And then we have Dr. G has expressed some interest in becoming a chaplain. So we have interest. Yeah, so we have two for sure on staff, and then we have potentially another person who's interested.
That's fabulous. And then also the budget changes, the pay for election inspectors and chiefs, that's reflected in the clerk's budget, even though it's an HR accomplishment as well. But is that reflected in the HR budget or in the clerk's budget?
I think it's because HR manages the salary schedules, the pay plans. We also manage the hourly pay plan. So any kind of changes to pay rates would always be usually typically shown in the HR budget. But you're right. I mean, the cost of paying the election inspectors and chiefs would come out of the clerk's department budget.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Misty.
No, absolutely right. So it's a one-stop spot, just like that 2% COLA affects all of the departments. So rather than listing it in each one, we list all that pay plan related stuff in HR. So it's together.
Perfect. Got it. Thank you.
Dorothy.
Okay, I really appreciate hearing all the racial equity things. Just a real quick question. This week, the Racial Justice Summit is happening. Do we have any of our staff that are participating in that?
Not that I'm aware. I sent out a number of different trainings that are coming up. There's a Facing Race conference in November, and there was, I had a whole email listing of different events coming up. I do believe I had the YWCA summit on there, but I don't know if any of our ERG members had attended it or if any other employees are.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sarah, if I may, just real quick. There was some interest placed in that racial summit, and although it couldn't happen this time around, we have made some strides in creating partnerships with some of the same individuals.
Perfect, thanks. Hey, Joe, what's the last name of the other chaplain? David, is it Jacobson?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. David Jacobson's our other chaplain.
Sarah, another conference is coming, is very well attended, that is going to be virtual this year, is the Diversity Summit, organized by the Urban League and MARREP.
Yep.
So that one.
I'm taking note.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. If any council members know of upcoming, summits, trainings, workshops, please reach out. And then the employee resource group is going to be putting together a list, and that will be one of our first emails that go out to all staff, is like, sharing all of these resources. So thank you for sharing that.
Any other question for Sarah?
Can I throw out a suggestion to her for the list she's compiling? Can we also send suggestions for reading materials and documentary movies and things like that can be on that list?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, we did. We talked about that as well. Yep. So if anyone does have reading materials or documentaries, please, or video clips or movies, we'll be putting together a list. I know there's a lot of resources out there right now already. So we'll also be kind of tapping into some of those.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I am mute.
Oh.
So next presentation is for the senior center. Is Jill ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Jill.
Good evening, everybody. Well, I'll start out with our accomplishments in 2020, kind of jumping to the bottom because COVID has been extremely challenging for our department, just like many other departments. Figuring out when to close the senior center was extremely stressful, and it took a lot of planning. And I think that over the course of the last 6-7 months, we have done a really good job of transitioning into a lot of virtual programs. We're doing Zoom exercise classes, and thanks to Fact TV, we were able to make new exercise classes that are just right on the website. And then, like I said, we're working with a lot of instructors to put those our Zoom classes on now that we're even able to possibly charge a fee and starting to kind of look at what the new normal might be. We keep moving the goal line back and back. We think we can bring people back, and then we can't. And it just seems like every month we get really excited about it, but we can't. So that's been a big change for us, but I think we've been really successful. The meal program, not having people in for meals did increase our meal deliveries by 50%, doubling our routes. I'm doubling the people that got home delivered meals, and then expanding those routes to 6. And that was a lot based on how many people were getting meals and how many square miles we're covering, and trying to keep the food warm. We have to temp it when it goes out and temp it when it comes back. So gently asking all of our volunteers over 60 to not volunteer, and then trying to replace all those volunteers was a big transition. And hats off to Mandy Miller, our volunteer coordinator, that did a great job recruiting a lot of younger volunteers. And I'm proud to say we've kept them all safe and are still able to send out our meals. Every day except Wednesday, we are not doing meals on Wednesdays, but we do continue to meet the nutrition needs of the people in our area. So then kind of moving back up a little bit, I think it just starts with our partnership with Edgewood College. We started last year working with nursing students to train them to be patient advocates. It was kind of a spinoff of our volunteer nurse program. And it worked out great, where we partner up nursing students to go and attend doctor appointments with clients that might not be able to advocate well for themselves. Maybe their situations are complicated and they're nervous when they go to the doctor, and they come back home and they don't really know what was said or what was recommended. So the students were going with them and then helping them kind of work through what the doctor said and what their goals are. This year, we talked to Edgewood College knowing it would be different. And so with the funding support of the Fitchburg Senior Center Friends, we were able to purchase 2 iPads. And now we have the students doing televisits with the clients and the doctors. And I'm really excited because I think that's kind of a wave of the future. And hopefully it will gain some momentum, because I think for older adults, oftentimes it's hard to find a ride to the doctor. It takes a lot of time. They don't want to go out in the winter. We see a lot of cancellations for doctor's appointments. So we're hoping to, use these iPads this year as a real learning experience, and it's great partnering with Edgewood. We did change some policy, and we were able to go and work out an agreement with MATC to bring classes back, and then unfortunately that didn't happen. So hopefully that will carry over into 2021. Something new this year is we're partnering with the School of Public Health and working with medical students to do our Aging Mastery program, which is an evidence-based program, and it covers a lot of different pillars of wellness. But the students now are facilitating this, and we have 13 people signed up, and they do a class every single week via Zoom. And it's really fun to be partnering with them and hoping to do this again. And then I hope to continue to work with them and maybe even expand our patient advocate program to include some of the medical students, because I'm a big believer in giving hands-on experience to students that are in school and trying to figure out what they really want to do, and having that experience through us is really a win-win for us and them. We hadn't had a social work intern for several years. We did take on an intern this fall. And he happens to be a Fitchburg police officer. So it's a really unique situation and opportunity for our departments to work together to learn more about each other. And, he brings a lot to the table already. So it's really been great so far. It's only been a month, but I'm really excited to be working with him. So lots of student stuff going on. So it's keeping us all busy. So those are our main things that we have going on right now. For 2021, like I mentioned, to continue this nursing collaboration with the nursing school and expand those telemedicine visits. I think that is a perfect opportunity to learn about that. And as I mentioned, the School of Public Health as well. And we're working with Newbridge Madison, which offers the cultural diversity Latino program. Dane County has a cultural diversity specialist for African Americans and Latino older adults, and we've worked with them in the past. And Newbridge was awarded in a grant from Healthy Neighborhoods to expand some Latino programs. So we're hoping maybe now they look more virtual than in the past, but to expand our outreach to the Hispanic older adults in our community and working more closely with Newbridge. And it's nice. The student intern that we have also speaks Spanish, because that's always been a barrier. None of our staff speak Spanish at this point. So anyway, I'm looking forward to working with them. And then we are implementing this electronic marketing update called Constant Contact, where we can do email blasts and kind of just looking towards the future. Right now we're not able to distribute as many hard copies of our newsletter that we used to. Our main, location that people picked up those newsletters with the library. Everything has just kind of come to a little bit of a halt. So we're doing a lot more electronic marketing, and certainly not reaching everybody, but this Constant Contact is, you don't have to do a link at all. You can look right away at what is being advertised rather than click. So I think it's going to serve us really well. And so then moving down, okay. I'm living with my parents right now. And so that was my mom talking to me. I'm helping them out. Anyway, so significant budget changes. When I did the budget, we were looking at a 5% decrease in county funds, but it looks like they are going to maintain the same funding that we had last year. In fact, we might get a little bit more for nutrition, and for some of the newer council members, our case management program and our nutrition program, we receive county funding, and it's all based on a formula that pulls in a lot of different things like age of the average age that we serve. Are they rural or urban? Do they get food share or not? Diversity is a big factor in that. So we've been lucky to serve more people and also serve a wider variety of diversity. So our funding has increased over the last several years. And I see that continuing. So we're lucky to be able to get that county funding. The case management funding, which is the bulk of the funding, it's probably closer to 50,000. That is non-mandated money. So that comes out of the county's general fund. So we do a lot of advocacy to keep that funding coming through. The nutrition funding, which is closer to 30,000 or a little bit more, I think, Misty, we're around maybe 89,000 in funding. But the nutrition funding is comes from Older Americas Act, so it's federal funding. So that's usually pretty secure because it does come down from federal to state to county and down to us. And that's really based on number of people that we serve with the meal program. So, so anyway, we're glad to see that there's no cuts to that. You'll see some big chunks reduced in these accounts that I've mentioned here, and that's just based on a grant that we did apply for, but then did not receive last year. So you'll see a drop this year in those accounts. As the mayor alluded to, the limited term of employees, which is our exercise instructors, we modified their pay schedule because in the past, these exercise instructors were independent contractors, and years ago they were periodically getting big increases in salaries. Like we might go, 5-6 years without an increase, and then we would increase their salary based on a conversation. And so somehow those certain increases got adopted for a couple of the long-term employees that we had been working with that were independent contractors and moved into LTEs. And so looking at that, I talked to Misty in HR and asked if we can put them on more of a pay schedule that looks like everybody else's with smaller incremental increases. And so that refers to that. Removed cable service. Misty, I don't know what that is.
Yep, so that the council will see that in a variety of different departments.
Oh, got it. Okay, that's not mine. Okay.
Charter, cable, or whatever was eliminated across the city.
Okay, thanks. And then there's the constant contact, the database. The email marketing that we're doing. And it's a pretty small fee, and we're able to even make that up. Dave Hill, the assistant director, we do sponsors in our newsletter, so we try to cover our cost by getting sponsors in the newsletter. So we'll be able to cover that without a problem. And then the mayor spoke to this about the increase in the hours for our exercise instructors. Even though they are limited term employees, we make sure that all of these classes we're able to bring in 20% revenue, cover our expenses, and they keep 20%. So anything we do with these, any sort of exercise classes, we make sure we bring in the 20%. So there should really be no expense to the city, basically. So I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Jill.
All right, thank you.
Misty, I have a question in the, in the financial summary. There is if you compare the last two columns, the 21 and the budget change, the 2020 and the 21, there is an error there in the signs.
I don't think so. So what that column is from budget to budget. So it's comparing the 2020.
Oh, from that one. Okay.
To the 2021. This is the proposed budget.
Okay. Okay, any question for Jill? No?
No.
I don't see any question in the chat. So, okay, Jill, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next presentation is Fact TV, and we have Jeremy Crosby, the manager. Jeremy.
Everybody hear me okay? I'm gonna take that as a yes, because my team would tell me if it wasn't good. We are first just very thankful that the mayor did look at our budget and did address the needs of the cable franchise fees that have continued to go down out of our control. And then with the state stepping in and cutting back too, we're very excited that that was addressed this year. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end here. As far as major accomplishments for 2020, before COVID hit, live sports coverage for the Verona Area School District was very successful for our first year out. And thankfully we got through the whole year before our special SUV took a turn for the worst and ended its career on a somber note. But we were able to get out and cover basketball and football this past school year, again before COVID. So that was bringing live sports to Fitchburg and Verona, which hadn't been done for a very long time. So I was very thankful for our staff taking that on. Full COVID-19 response. Our staff stepped in many various ways and developed procedures and different communications. We were everywhere, and we are still everywhere to help assist in this communication world. I'm so glad that councils before you and current have been supporting Fact TV, because a lot of this stuff was already in place when COVID hit. So for us to keep moving the city forward with meetings and streaming meetings, some people had never even streamed a meeting before. And the city of Fitchburg has been streaming meetings since 2010. So bringing on this element that we're in tonight, where we're bringing everybody in, we're basically passing that through out to our airwaves that have been in place for years. So kudos for you, and kudos to my team for making all of this work day in and day out for the COVID-19. We continue to help training departments on the remote meeting operations, develop emergency broadcasts. We went into emergency broadcast the very weekend that the governor was about to shut down things for a while. We kicked into our emergency broadcast mode, and we're continuing to push out all the news and updates that were coming from the state and the county, and including city of Fitchburg, and continue to do that today, and we'll continue on with that. Implemented the mayor's Let's Read a Book campaign. Went very good. Thank you all for participated in that. It was a lot of fun. I have to try to bring that back. Responded to the activation of the Emergency Operations Center a few different times. Hopefully you get a chance to go up and see what Joe's got done up at Station 1, but we're a part of that response. And whether you knew it or not, there was a stage and a whole setup up there if we did have any emergency response where we would need to have large press gatherings, information passed out. We've been working closely with the fire department and with Joe's leadership, able to be right there if an emergency situation were to arise. Behind the scenes, we can get that information out quickly in a time of crisis. So it was nice practice for us to actually go through the motions and learn. So while you didn't hear or see it behind the scenes, really great job by our staff. The future funding report and committee of the whole, that was a big deal for us this year in getting that out. I said it during my presentation at Cowan. I'll say it again. Thank you to Misty and the finance department for all these years. Misty spent a lot of time helping organize and make sure that when we got to the presentation day and presenting all the information out to you, and continues to be there to help. So thank you to her and her team for help on that. We continue to support the Verona Area School District with many different projects, paid and not paid. So we actually do a lot of promo work for them that they'll hire Fact TV to come out and do a training videos. In fact, Scott just got a nice letter there from the school district. Scott Yarbrough, our assistant manager, he does a great job, and the Verona School District loves him. So anytime he steps into any school there, they know Scott's there. So he's done a great job on that front. And I'll just say overall that our two main focuses are talking Fitchburg and and city government meetings. I mean, that's really our bread and butter now. Is anytime that we're not doing meetings, we're getting information out to the public, and using Talking Fitchburg as that platform has been amazing. And a shout out to the Spanish News. That's a very big deal to us, to be more diverse, being able to get that message out to folks that we hadn't been able to reach in the past. So Julia and all the volunteers that are part of that is awesome. And I'm hoping we can continue to move that into the near future. As far as new initiatives coming up for 2021, obviously the future funding for us has been a big talk here, so looking forward to discussing that with you moving forward. We'll continue to develop our Talking Fitchburg. That's all of our news coverage, live remote broadcasting, live sports. Obviously, when things come back online, whatever that new reality is, we'll be there and covering it with the tools that we have to do that. And then just continuing, as we know, with this new meeting stuff, we'll always continue to be on the cutting edge here of learning what's out there, making sure it's safe, and keep providing the best access we can for bringing everybody together in this new remote world. So a lot of work happening behind the scenes here at Fact TV. Looking at just the significant budget changes, as mentioned, the mayor has included that subsidy with the property taxes to prevent us from being in that deficit this year. And then, as you had mentioned, the capital projects will continue to come out of the fund balance. And you have seen those and know where that is at, so I can answer any questions on the capital side. Franchise fees will continue to decline. We don't know. This year is, everything with COVID. I'll leave it at that. We don't know where those numbers are gonna get out, but we'll keep an eye on it. I would point out on that third bullet point that reduction in cable fees. So this year it was down to 4.5, and it will be down to its new 4% moving forward. And we'll stay at that at least 10 years. State did, however, decide to activate that lost revenue and aid program. So Misty's got those numbers labeled out there, and that will stay as shown. So it doesn't change every year. So the first 2 years it changed, and now it's locked until that 10 years, or they just change their mind and decide not to do it. So we'll keep an eye on that, but franchise fees do come from cable providers. We have 3 cable providers in the city of Fitchburg: Spectrum, AT&T, Uverse, and TDS. TDS and AT&T are in small parts of the city, not the whole city. Spectrum is. And again, if you don't buy cable or have any cable subscription, we're not getting a fee. And the more you hear cutting the cord, you're basically cutting our budget at the same time. So again, out of our control. But fortunately enough, we still provide access to the internet for free, to streaming platforms like Roku and Apple TV for free. So you don't need cable to watch Fact TV. So double-edged swords there that we want to be everywhere, but can't be. And then finally, the mayor did remove some computers out of our budget, took out the cable service, which I need to talk to Misty about, and the property tax funding, or to cover the cost there for the property taxes. So I would say business as usual in the new norm, but we keep plugging along, and we're glad to help you out each and every night.
Thank you. So I have a question in the chat. Gabriela.
So I don't know if Jeremy's the right person to speak to this, or Misty, but in terms of landing on that $95,000 property tax levy to support Fact TV, how was that number arrived at?
That is just the differential. So we looked at the budget for Fact TV, the non-capital stuff that they needed to fund their operations based on what's in front of you. That last bullet point identified some things that were removed from prior years to get that number at least a little bit down. And then it's just the difference. So the mayor completely eliminated the structural deficit on the operating side, rather than saying Fact TV should reduce their services to reduce their expenses.
Great, thanks.
Any other question? No? Okay.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Jeremy. So next presentation is from the Planning and Zoning Department. So Sonia is here.
Good evening, Council. Sonia Kriesel, City Planner and Zoning Administrator. I'll be presenting two different divisions of our department. First, the Planning and Zoning Division, and then second, the Sustainability and H&I, Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative Division. Really, overall, both divisions are maintenance of prior year's budgets, and in fact have net reductions in both. So as such, I'll keep this relatively brief. But again, first going through the Planning and Zoning Division with the significant accomplishments in 2020. You're all aware that we did complete the state mandated 10-year update to the comprehensive plan, a major undertaking, and through March that really dominated most of the department's time, as well as afterwards, and continuing to work on implementation efforts per our usual business. Second, another large project was the urban service area amendment request to add approximately 90 acres in the Fahey South area. That's part of the McGaw Park neighborhood plan. So that is a bit of a process to work with our regional planning commission, the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, and the DNR to get that through its approvals and eventually allow sewer service extensions and land use entitlements for additional development that would be consistent with our McGaw Park plan. Other significant accomplishments included the environmental corridor amendment, just as one example, to allow the juice plant redevelopment site project to proceed, as well as supporting other North Fish Hatchery Road redevelopment recommendations. So really a lot of meetings and work in coordination with our economic development department, the Plan Commission and Development Review, to implement a lot of recommendations for potential and submitted applications for development projects along our major corridor, as well as assisting with TID 13 amendments, the unusual and new work of adapting to COVID response items and working with businesses such as the administrative architectural design review approvals that allow outdoor dining, and then a new mandated housing affordability report that also demanded a lot of time, that was following the Developers Bill of Rights adopted in 2017 by the state legislature. New initiatives for the Planning and Zoning Department that we'll look forward to is ramping up for one, Town of Madison attachment planning. Still, as was mentioned earlier, in a bit of the conceptual and scoping out phases of what that might look like. But for the planning department specifically, some of our initial responsibilities are looking at a communications plan and coordinating public input and outreach and what those sorts of things might look like. As well as in the future, in the next year, looking at appropriate zoning designations for the lands that will come into City of Fitchburg jurisdiction, and looking at its consistency with the Southville neighborhood plan. And again, a new initiative sort of continuing to implement plans that have been adopted recently or other projects that have been completed, and I've listed the historic survey implementation, as well as supporting implementation of the housing plan as the ad hoc as the housing committee gets going with some of their meetings more regularly. Significant budget changes for the Planning and Zoning Division, as I mentioned, a net reduction. One is reducing intern hours back down to a normal level. They were increased temporarily just for the comprehensive plan project. Out-of-state travel was removed due to COVID. And then finally, a minor reduction in printing expenses that were increased again temporarily for comp plan printing. So as I mentioned, really maintaining the same budget levels, and these in the big picture are relatively minor changes and net reductions. That's it on the planning and zoning section. So here we are now looking at the sustainability and H&I division. Significant accomplishments in 2020. Launched the fourth round successfully of the H&I grant program with about $100,000 requested in demand for applications. We also launched the pilot program for the Fitchburg Fund, which was the targeted effort to go towards a city identified priority issue and to leverage matching funds and efforts from United Way fundraising. Great efforts around the neighborhood hub planning, using CETA funding to as a seed for the planning efforts. You've seen recently the results of those planning efforts, and has resulted in great discussion for budget purposes and fodder for the next stages. Good renderings and phasing plans identified for neighborhood park efforts in that area. And then the last three are energy related. We've completed the Office of Energy Innovation grant and received the final report on energy plan recommendations. Our sustainability specialist, Phil Groupie, has gone around to city departments and has walked through the data and the analysis, and will begin identifying priorities. And I believe we'll be coming to the committee of the whole in upcoming months to walk through that with the council. We've also made significant strides in towards reaching the goals of our renewable energy resolution, signing the renewable energy rider, or RER, with Madison Gas and Electric to purchase renewable energy from the O'Brien Solar Farm, again putting us much closer to our renewable energy goals of 100% of the city's electricity from renewable energy by 2030. And then finally, the addition of solar panels on the new East Fire Station. New initiatives in this division for 2021, as I mentioned, implementation of the OEI Energy Plan, Office of Energy Innovation, continue improvements to the H&I grant program, and continuing implementation efforts for the neighborhood hub planning. And finally, significant budget changes. Again, net reduction, remove $2,000 in solar monitoring that will be performed by city staff instead of a consultant. It's my understanding that this was initially budgeted for legacy solar, and that in years after, city staff has sort of kept monitoring on our solar panels at the library, and will continue to do that in-house. The last two budget items are adding a membership for Sustainable Business Network membership. This allows greater access to quarterly meetings and reduced rates at Sustained Dane Conference. This is sort of the main networking opportunities for our sustainability specialist position and efforts related there, as well as adding $110 for the Renewable Energy Summit held annually at the Monona Terrace. That's all I have.
I have a question. Regarding the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative, you mentioned in page 127 in the budget, I don't know. So the amount for 2021 is $63,000. So according to my numbers, is $50,000 plus $15,000 that we approved last year, and we didn't use from the Fitchburg fund. So what is 63,000 instead of 65,000? How do you come up with the $63,000?
I believe that's not inclusive of any funds that would be requested for carryover, which would come in the next few months. And I see Misty nodding. So unused Fitchburg fund dollars, for example, would be requested in the budget carryover, I believe in January. And then that would be added to the 63,000.
That's done in March, but yeah, so this would be the new dollars that are allocated to the project.
The new amount.
New
What
funding.
about the $15,000 we didn't use last year for the Fitchburg fund? Where they are?
So that's what Sonia was saying would be included in the carryover request. So it's part of the 63,000 that you can see for 2020. That full 63,000, I believe, is not planned to be spent. So at the end of the year, they will request to carry that over into 2021, which will be a budget amendment resolution through council generally in March, early March.
Okay. Thank you. Any question for Sonia? No? Okay. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you all for your time.
So next.
Can we get a question?
Hello?
You just had one.
So the next
Tom has a
presentation
question.
is EMS.
Just a comment. Oh,
We
one
have
second.
Julie, I think Tom has a question.
Oh, I didn't see it in the chat. Okay, Tom, yes.
That's okay. Sonia, could you just add maybe this to 2020 or 2021? It's just a comment on my part. It has to do with the solar farm in District 4. Obviously, there was a big deal. Not only is it a solar farm, but it's an educational farm. You know, I think that's a big deal for the city as it comes on board. If you just maybe make a note there, that's all.
Thanks, Tom. We can add that as a reference. Yeah.
That's fine. Thanks. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So next we move to EMS. Chief, are you here?
I am here. I think my sound is working as well. Scott got me hooked up. So, good evening, elders. Thanks for letting me come in and talk to you this evening. I'm going to start with those significant accomplishments that many others talked about as well, and that was the COVID issues that affected all of us as emergency responders. So, right out the gate, we hit the ground running. Great partnerships with Dane County Emergency Management, Dane County Public Health. Lots of times sit and become a Zoom expert, and lots of meetings, but developed decontamination procedures, back to work guidelines, worked with all of our municipalities to get everybody on the same page, and keep our workforce healthy, and being a huge accomplishment, being that we know we picked up people who had COVID. We know we picked up people who we didn't know at the time had COVID, and fingers crossed, as of this moment in time anyways, have kept a completely healthy workforce. So to me, that's a huge accomplishment to our staff and everybody that they work with, to keep healthy, and hopefully we can keep those practices up. Other big thing that we accomplished this year, I said other than staying healthy, I think that was a pretty good one on its own. We were actually able to repurpose one of the Dane County assets. So Dane County actually had some disaster trailers stationed around the county. They kind of got for a multitude of purposes, decided to decommission many of those trailers. They still have a couple of main ones. So essentially a trailer popped up. The county said anybody interested in using it. Looking at kind of some of the events that have happened over the last few years, we have essentially the EMS role in providing, and predominantly it's rehab to firefighters and other providers on fire scenes, is us to make sure that they are rehydrated and checking vital signs, getting them nutrition, getting them cooled down, and getting back into to fight the fight. So we've had that equipment kind of spread over 3 different stations in multiple different places. So actually what we did is took one of those trailers and actually created a rehab trailer. Most of the supplies we either had or was donated by area businesses, water, food, or wrapped to the trailer to put Fitchburg on what it is. So we've been able to put that trailer together. I say, fortunately for the Fitchburg or the Verona Fire EMS District, we haven't actually had to deploy it yet. It actually has gone out 3 times to the east side of the county. It is a resource we've actually been able to share throughout the county on some larger fires that have occurred over in, let's say, Deerfield, Cottage, and Cottage Grove. So was a great asset. The county, the east side of the county kind of loved that trailer, saw what we did with it, and is looking into kind of forming one on the east side of the county as well. So I think it's a great idea that we're out there. As far as an EMS side of things, all of our stuff is in one place, and we can get it to those locations where we can support the firefighting efforts. Multitude of other stuff. We have used it on our own trainings, as well as some of the City of Verona Fire Department as well has gone out in some trainings. It's great for us to practice setting all that stuff up, but then we can use that to support those training events as well. When we finally get back to whatever that new norm is we talk about, we can use it at our high school events and some of the other events that we go to help support us. So those are 2 of the big things that we got in 2020. As we look into, again, what the new 2021 will bring us, I think it's going to continue to be a lot of keeping ourselves safe. So what we'll start with, as you are aware and have talked about already this evening, is the town of Madison. So probably back April timeframe, was approached by the Alliant Energy Center as kind of word leaked out about the town of Madison not being able to at least kind of support their emergency services anymore. The Alliant Energy reached out to us as a neighbor and asked if we had any interest in providing EMS support to events that occur at the Alliant Energy Center, which have been won this year, as far as I'm aware, that we have participated in. The Alliant Energy Center, as you're maybe aware, eventually will go to the city of Madison. So some conversations with Chief Davis, who expressed interest, said as long as he is chief, feels that the city of Madison has enough special events that they support. Very much supportive then of Fitrona stepping in and helping out with the Alliant Energy Center. So signed an intergovernmental agreement with them to provide ambulance support for whatever that may need. I believe I have explained it in the past. So when we provide dedicated ambulance services, not just to the Alliant Energy Center, but to anybody who contracts an ambulance, because we take that ambulance essentially, we will always maintain 3 ambulances in our district to provide 911 services. So what we do is we bring in an extra crew. They take one of our extra ambulances and they go to that event. For ambulances that they contract, that ambulance is dedicated to that event. So what we charge for that event covers 100% of the cost of staffing of that event. Because that ambulance is not available to respond to the taxpayers, that event incurs all of those costs. So at no point are we ever giving those services away that won't benefit the taxpayers. So no, it's not even an exception to that. The only other events that we really do upstaffing like that is when we go to provide EMS services to the high school. They're athletic events, and those ambulances actually do remain in service, though they are essentially primarily there to respond to any issues that would happen out at the high school. If a 4th 911 call were to come in, those ambulances would leave. That's kind of the exception to that rule. Bullet point number 2 there is we did receive some COVID funds as well. We had to adapt a lot of kind of our current practices to, again, keep ourselves safe. PPE will remain a challenge for, I think, ever, at least in my time here. But one of the things we did was receive some funds, federal government funds to the Department of Health Services for COVID expenditures. One of the things we've had to change in our practice is actually changing a lot of airway management stuff. As I'm sure you're very familiar with COVID and one of its transmission rates. The primary method of transmission is actually airborne. So changing some of those practices, we actually received a significant enough funding where we were able to purchase some transport ventilators. So twofold for that for us is one is it our own providers, it actually helps keep them farther away from a patient's airway as we were managing that airway management and ventilation. It's got its own health benefits as well. It takes kind of the human component away from it. We can cause our own different trauma. Third part of that actually purchasing of the ventilators is if you remember those stories about just the shortage of ventilators that was occurring fortunately, Madison was spared much of that, but should the epidemic continue or rear its ugly head again, we actually kind of become part of a regional bank of ventilators. It would have been very easy for us to give, had we had ventilators, the state reached out to find out who had them, would have been very easy for us to donate those or to loan essentially those ventilators to the hospitals who would need those for extended patient care. And we kind of become a bank of resources. So we actually have not received them yet. As you can imagine, they are on anywhere from 4 to 5, 6 month back order. We should have them by the end of the year. Be a pretty steep training curve for us. It's a pretty important procedure to make sure that we know all of our medics are trained up, and hopefully by the first of the year we'll have those in place. We're really hoping in 2021 to get back out to the community as we brought to this group and kind of talk to my commission frequently. Dane County is very much in pushing for cardiac arrest survival rates. And so there's a lot of initiatives. We were kind of right at the precipice of pushing out this very community-based high-performance CPR initiative that has come from, we've sent a lot of providers. We and the county itself has sent some providers to King County, Washington, which is truly a leader in the nation. Everybody really watches to see what they do. In patients with sudden cardiac arrest, they have upwards of 40 to 50% survival rates. In Dane County, we're probably about somewhere between 20 to 30%. So really pushing to get up there, and then back in March, ready to really push that out to the communities when you can imagine everything shut down. So really hoping to get back up there and do, we're hoping to do some pop-up stuff of walking into Target, walking into Farm and Fleet and saying, give me 5 minutes of your day and learn how to push on a chest. That's it. So really hoping to get back out there in 2021 when that is safe to do so. Last bullet point I put on there is you heard about this as part of the CIP project is as part of our ambulance replacement policy. Still looking at actually adding some green initiatives in there, did a little bit of research. The city of Madison has 2 ambulances who have a very similar technology as this. So really at the guidance of the mayors, I did some footwork with the manufacturer who puts our ambulances together and came up with some technology that'll actually kind of support that green initiative. Essentially what it does is it hybrids, it's not a true hybrid ambulance, but what it does is actually hybrid the box of the ambulance. That's the biggest challenge that we face is how do we keep all the lights on, the air conditioning running, and keeping it a patient compartment that will support a patient in need of environmental controls without sucking the life out of a battery. So there's a couple different providers out there. We found one that our ambulance manufacturer uses, and hoping to put that into our ambulance next year. That'll really reduce the emissions that potentially, they talk about sitting at a fire standby. Those events can take hours. You know, most of our transport scene times are somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes. But even getting to a hospital and shutting it off, as soon as you open that door, that ambulance is cool. So it actually allows the vehicle itself to shut off, yet maintains the back of the ambulance in that temperature controlled environment. So looking for that into 2021, and hopefully we'll see some success with that and then push that off into the purchases of all future ambulances. So as far as our budget increases go, and if you can scroll down just a little bit, Misty, so they can see the numbers up top there. That's the perfect one there. So that's the operational and personnel costs that will operate fixed run for looking for 2021. I think it got brought up towards the CIP process. I hate to say it's fortunate that we have a revenue source, because our revenue source means people are having really bad days, but we do have a revenue source. So at least for 2021, 55% of our budget is actually supported by user fees, which means the municipalities then absorb the other 44. There's some decimal points in there, but roughly the other 44% is broken between our 3 municipalities that we support, and that is based off of equalized value. So as far as the equalized value of Fitchburg, most of the 3 municipalities have really bumped maybe about a percentage over the last couple of years. So Fitchburg is roughly about 50-point-something% of the remaining balance of what that budget costs. So what we did at the commission, we do review our base rates every year. And about every 2 years, we take a look at that base rate, and that's really just to put somebody in the back of the ambulance. We make sure that the whole commission looks at those. We make sure that they, I want to call them competitive, but fairly equal amongst the other services in Dane County. Really, we look at the city of Madison, city of Middleton, city of Sun Prairie, a couple other paramedic services that are popping up. So those will actually go up next year. They went up last in 2019. Kept our cost of the mileage and most of the supplies. The supplies we look at every year, as kind of alluded to earlier, the cost of personal protective equipment is just skyrocketing. The gloves, one of the items I consistently share is a case of gloves went up $50 for us in the last just 4 months. So it's a supply and demand thing. I mean, you can imagine gloves and face masks we use on every patient. So we try to maintain those costs, but we are limited. There's a significant amount of our patients who are Medicare and medical assistance patients, and there's nothing we can do with those. So the base rates were raised a little bit to help offset or to help support the cost of the user fees. Otherwise, the other significant change is going to come from wages and benefits that support our staff, as it is for every department. This is the 3rd year that, as part of the collective bargaining agreement, we are entering our 3rd year. Our staff actually signed a 4-year agreement last time, so we are actually 2022 will be our next contract negotiations. But this year, that will be the last increase, so our employees will move from a 10% to a 12% contribution towards their health and dental, which is going to actually help offset a little bit of the rising costs. We still have not seen our health and dental rates come through. We tend to get ours a couple weeks after the municipalities do. They tend to be fairly similar. Really the other cuts that we are able to, so that operating expenses, it's $420,000. That's really the only wiggle room that I have. And there's not a lot of wiggle room in there to begin with. It's just expensive. It's expensive to keep trucks in the streets operating and buying a lot of medical equipment. The one thing we were able to take out of there, or I brought into our commission kind of as a proposal, was our internship program. So that internship program, it feeds, I guess it is a feeder from the fire internship programs for both Fitchburg and Verona. It's essentially a third year offering for those fire interns at those departments. We provide essentially mentoring, take those interns, we provide a mentor for them, they follow them throughout the year. What we do is, as far as the budgetary wise, is actually we help offset the cost of tuition, testing, and books. So depending on how many applicants are in there, we pay for about half of their tuition. Would like to see those funds come back. Really, as we were just trying to keep this budget as low as we possibly could. I don't want to say it was an easy cut, but it was an easy cut. It's a great opportunity. It really serves the community, I think, and it provides a great opportunity for those firefighters to continue to advance as far as their whole fire and EMS career. What we get out of it is essentially, again, kind of our green initiative, right? We get warm fuzzies because we help other people. So I don't know that this is going to be a warm fuzzy year. We took that funding out. Would like to see that funding come back absolutely as early as 2022, but that's a number we can play with. So that was the busy. Essentially, those were the biggest things I could cut. Overall, what you see then is Fitchburg's operating share, which is 50% of that budget. I believe the percentage-wise is going to be 5.44% is what your contribution ended up being, because the double-edged sword of the great thing of the growth in Fitchburg is great. You also had a lot of growth. So your growth actually was significantly higher than both the city of Verona and the town of Verona. So the percentage increase from last year to this year was higher for you than the other two municipalities. I saw a couple of questions.
Thank you, Chief. I have a question on the chat. Gabriela?
Hi, Chief. Thanks so much for a great presentation. I am curious about the revenue piece, where the user fees, and how that functions in terms of collections. Like, do we have administrative staff that deal with collection? And I guess on top of that, if an individual is unable to pay, for example, if they're uninsured, does the city or does the EMS absorb that cost, or do we go into collections, or how does that function?
Sure. So great questions. We actually use a third-party biller. So we Three Rivers Billing out of Cedarburg, Wisconsin is who we use. We made that switch. Aaron, you might actually even know this. It's probably been about 8-10 years ago. We did, when I've been with Fitchburg now, it'll be 20 years next year. We used to do our own in-house billing. Once we started hitting 2,000 calls, started sending that out. So our billing agency, essentially, they collect their fees to us. They keep 6% of what we bill. So we actually do shop around every few years to make sure that we're getting the best company. But then, so they do all of our billing for us, and we do actually have a policy that says what we bill. Not every call we go on generates a bill. So that's kind of continue on with that if you want. Otherwise, that's what we do. About 40, last I knew was about 47% of totally what we bill out is what we collect. Now that also includes that for every Medicare patient where I bill $1,600 to, I'm probably going to only get about $500. That's the nature of dealing with Medicare. On a medical assistance patient, we're going to get about $2. That's the nature of dealing with medical assistance. And I can provide those numbers for you. That's actually in our annual report. It's up on the Fitchburg website. It breaks down by payer what we actually do charge out to different payers. So the majority of this is private pay. And then we do still have, you can imagine the socioeconomical makeup of our three municipalities. We do have a large amount of private pays and underinsured. Actually, timing that you bring up about asking about patients who are unable to pay. We're actually currently reviewing that process, that policy. We do have a policy in place. I'm not going to say that it's like up to the discretion of the chief. There's some guidelines in there about what gets written off. but we're revisiting that. And actually tomorrow afternoon, I actually do have a meeting with, she works with Dane County Department of Aging, and I've actually kind of corresponded with her lately over the last few years about recreating a more solid poverty guideline, essentially a guideline based on poverty levels in Dane County, or federal poverty guidelines that would write or reduce the cost of that bill. This was actually brought up at our commission meeting about 2 weeks ago. Pretty good discussions with them about what their wishes are as representatives of the municipalities. Because as you mentioned, if I write the bill off, I don't want to say somebody absorbs that cost because the cost just isn't collected. Ultimately, the taxpayers will absorb those costs. But going with kind of the theory that was a great presentation that was done a few years ago by my contact out at Dane County of, we do have those underserved, underinsured people who are truly trying to make a difference in their lives. And by us, if bills aren't collected, essentially they get a 30, 60, 90-day notice. If they still don't pay it after 90 days, it actually does go to a collection agency. We do use the tax interception function. So if at some point, anytime after that goes to a collection agency, they do file income taxes and would receive a refund, we get our money from them. Now, by the time once it goes to a collection agency for us, we consider it written off. We collect very little of whatever actually goes to a collection agency. And they keep, I believe, about 33 to 50% of that, because they're doing a lot of footwork trying to collect that money that we just consider not collectible. But we are currently in the process of updating that write-off policy. We're off the top of my head, or even anecdotally, I'm starting to see that number creep up a little bit. I still don't know that I would call it significant. Maybe $20,000 a year that we write off of people who, and most of them are letters who they're people who are sending it to it comes to me and says, I lost my, most of the time your ambulance took me in because I'm sick and now I lost my job. Right. There's a reason that we got involved with them in the first place. So that's most of those. Many of them say, I can't work, I'm not working, can this get reduced? And I do have some guidelines to work with those.
Great, so that conversation, those conversations are gonna happen at the Mass Commission, is that where those
Yep, so it occurred at our last one about 2 weeks ago. I am meeting tomorrow with Dane County. I was given some homework. They had some more questions for me. So I'm meeting with my contact at Dane County. So October's commission meeting will be the district meeting where you'll all visit all this again and talk about kind of the state of Fitchburg. So our November's commission meeting is when we'll actually bring that back to the table. More than welcome to come to that and provide some great input.
Fantastic, thank you so much.
I have a question, Chief. I am looking at your 21 operating budget, page 133. I see an increase in uniform by almost 50%, $5,000. Why is that? What happened?
Sure. So similar to the turnout protection, the turnout gear that we wear that looks fire-like is not fire-rated, but it is still guided by the same NFPA guidelines. So when we buy our paramedics turnout gear, right, to crawl into the back of a vehicle while it's getting cut apart, that gear, just like fire gear, does have a 10-year lifespan to it. So I do actually have two individuals next year who their gear is coming up on his 10-year lifespan and needs to be replaced. So yeah, that's why that number is so large, because that gear is expensive.
Okay.
We do utilize the old gear, so it doesn't get thrown away. We actually use that for our part-time paramedics who we hired because, yes, it's out of its guidelines, but most of it is still usable. So we do actually repurpose it.
Okay, thank you. So I have another question in the chat. Dorothy?
Yeah, thanks. Just a real quick, when you were talking about the battery module, made me wonder what the lifespan is for those. How many years do those last?
So they're telling me about 7. So it's a bank of 3. It's a bank of 3, and they refer to them as cells, not batteries, but they're batteries. It is about a 7-year lifespan.
Thank you.
Any other question? I want to make a question, and I will say, Chief, I was very impressed with your services. I had to use your service in July, the ambulance, and you were in my home like, I don't know, in less than 6 minutes. And you guys, I have to, by personal issue that I had, I had to use your services, and I was very impressed with you guys, with the service, all your equipment. It was, so I want to thank you. And I know that this is a great service for the city. And sometimes in the past, I used to criticize you for why do we need those equipment? And now I understand why do we need those equipment. So, okay? So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we move to the next presentation is the fire. We have the chief here.
Good evening.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. You guys ready for me?
Are you ready? Yes.
All right. We're going to go through the significant accomplishments in 2020. A couple of things that we did. Obviously, our fire station number 3 was put online last year, but this year we needed to go through some of the commissioning and the warranty work, and the solar array was recently installed. We can't take a lot of credit for the solar array. That was done through planning and parks, or planning and public works. But part of what we need to do is we need to train on its operation and the possibility of making it safe in the event that there's ever an issue with those panels. So we've been going through that recently, actually, and we've got training scheduled for the upcoming weeks. Station number 1 was occupied after its remodel just in time for our pandemic. So we were able to upstaff our EOC, not so much upstaff, but I should correct that. We stood it up, we made sure it was operational, and if the need presented that we were going to require the assistance of additional city staff, all of that was in place and ready to go. But what we were able to do based on the partnership that we have with Dane County, there was some concern about the spread of COVID in their public safety building because of the fact that it also houses corrections. And so their emergency management personnel actually came to the backup EOC to staff it for several weeks during the pandemic. And then during the civic unrest and the demonstrations that took place downtown, obviously there presented an issue with accessibility to the Emergency Operations Center with Dane County. So once again, we got everything ready and we're able to utilize the equipment that has been in place and actually supplied by the county for that purpose. The other thing that I needed to discuss just a little bit with the pandemic is some of the things that we've been working on with HR, with Fitchburg. A lot of it really just has to do with trending, what's happening with the progression of the virus, how it's affecting our municipality, and what we need to do in order to best prepare ourselves moving forward. A lot of it is just giving us a really good indication as far as how our civic services are going to be affected and where we're seeing the biggest impact in our community. And that's been an ongoing, I'd like to say exhausting effort, because it's just been a lot of information, a lot of it's unknown. We're researching a lot of it on the fly. We're utilizing some of the equipment that's coming from Dane County, Public Health of Madison and Dane County. But a lot of the local numbers are what they are, and we're working with them to try to best appreciate what our impact is. The other thing that Sarah talked about was our chaplaincy program. It is built in to be supportive of public safety initially. There are some potential uses with other civic and city employees. But the main thing about chaplaincy is that constant, gentle presence, making sure that you establish a relationship in advance of the need of critical incident stress and post-traumatic stress. And that's probably the biggest value of having chaplains available, especially for our emergency responders who have a tough time accepting help to begin with. They're always the ones taking care of the problems. They don't want to be the ones accepting the fact that they have the need for help. So chaplains really do help out in that regard. And the other benefit to our program is the fact that we are reaching out with the secular and the non-secular. So it really does make a difference when we know that we're not pushing any specific agenda. We are there for the employees. I would be happy to answer more information about that, but this is the budget, so we'll keep going. The emergency operations basic plan was approved in 2020. We're improving our relationship with Safe Kids and the partnership that we have on the other side of our station here. What that does is it allows us to participate directly and indirectly in pediatric risk reduction and injury prevention, which is stuff we need to be doing anyway. It just sort of works out that now we have resident experts because they reside here. We have the squad that is being rechassied as we speak. That is going to be manufactured. Now, why rechassied? Why not replaced? Because of the fact that we were able to save a considerable amount on the reconstruction and utilize certain portions of that vehicle that weren't worn and replace the items that just were not going to be able to serve us over the next 15 to 20 years. We're working on leadership and mentorship training because of the fact that we are a combination department. We have a lot of we have people who come in here, they get their training, and then they move on for career positions. So it's a revolving door here at the fire department. We typically keep people for about 3 to 4 years. That's just the average. And then they move along. So we're constantly training, and it requires those that do stay on staff to be mentors and leaders within our organization. We're progressing in technical rescue. The reason why that's important, we did a risk assessment of our community, and with development, you typically have things like trench, confined space, structural situations, vulnerable structures that require a slightly different approach, and it requires different skills. So what we're working on primarily is train the trainer concept. We're not sending everybody to training, but we are sending select people to training to make them our resident experts, bring it back, and then train the rest of our department, which is one of the most effective ways of addressing training because of the fact that our expenses are controlled, but at the same time, we will likely have those resident experts available to us for a while. We typically don't send our paid on call personnel unless they've been around for a while to these specialized trainings. Those are typically our career people who are going to be here for a while. In addition to that, I know I've talked to many of you about our diversity and recruitment initiative. That is something that's been ongoing since I've been here, but we've been working on some focus groups. We've been doing a number of different things to identify how we can get a well represented department, one that reflects the community that we serve. And we've made some significant strides in that effort. The other thing is it's provided us with a lot of input from those around the community who are obviously people who are maybe a little bit deeper involved and more emotionally involved with the progress of recruitment. We want to make sure that we are doing what we can to involve them whenever we can. So I will move on to new initiatives unless anybody has any questions about significant accomplishments. Excuse me, I got to take a drink. New initiatives for 2021. We're going to be placing the squad in service, which primarily means that we are going to have some training that has to happen, and because of some things that aren't necessarily components that we're used to, obviously there's certain things that we'll have to address through training. We hope to have the squad in service within the first 2 months of 2021. We need to look at a new records management system. The records management system that we've had around for about 20 years is no longer going to be supported in the very near future, which means that we have to be very careful about how we address those things that ultimately drive what we do in the city. A lot of what we do is data driven. And if we don't necessarily get on top of our records management program, that could significantly involve a considerable effort in trying to get information that we already have transferred over to a program that we're not familiar with. So we're working through that right now. We hope to have something in place by January with this new budget. We are also evaluating scheduling software. We're trying to get all of that placed together under one software package. So those things, they're coming to light at about the right time. And the training software, same thing. We're looking at neighboring departments and what they have to offer and what they use for their training platforms, because of the fact that if there's shared content that we can take advantage of, it makes a whole lot of sense. But once again, is it worth the investment? Those are things that we would hope to evaluate in 2021. Our first line leadership and supervisory training will continue to be a priority. Some of our most influential supervisors in the fire service are our company officers. They're the people who are in the station every day. They drive the tone for the day, exactly how things get accomplished. And they are primarily those mentors that I talked about. So it's important to make sure that we're not assuming anything, and we provide them with the ability to get the appropriate training. That does two things for us. It reduces our risk with employee standards, and it also gives them the confidence to be able to take some next steps. So there's a succession planning element to that as well. The fire department budget predictions. Now, this is one thing that I'm hoping to evaluate citywide. Obviously, when we start talking about a developing community and a department that has to be able to support a developing community, we want to express some realistic expectation on the part of the fire department, obviously, and then to know what is realistically affordable and at what point. Because you'll see, I'm going to have a couple of initiatives in my package here that I've had for a while, and I can explain that a little bit further as well. And then we're going to be implementing some of our diversity and recruitment initiatives as we move forward because of the fact that no time like the present should have been done yesterday. So we'll continue to move forward as far as doing what we can to make our department a welcoming department for everybody. Some of the significant budget changes. The mayor talked about the out-of-state conferences. So at least for next year, there has been a reduction in our training budget. Those out-of-state trainings are typically the ones where we send our selected trainer candidates because there's not a lot of options available in state for some of the things that we're looking for. That being tech rescue, things like rapid intervention training, and certain techniques that are being developed at a number of different institutions around the United States. So that's where that out-of-state training comes in handy, and that's why we'd like to get back to it. Understanding the constraint on the budget this year and the possibility of not being able to travel next year anyway. And then the removal of cable, this was new to me, and I apologize for not having a whole lot of information on that. So I'll ask to curb that one right now. If there's any additional questions, I'd have to get more information. Any questions about significant budget changes?
Yes, we have a question. Gabriela?
Yes.
So I hope that this is an appropriate time for this question, but I was looking at the personnel requests that were not able to be included in the budget, and one of them from the fire department was the chief of prevention, inspection, and training. And that description of that position seemed quite important to me. And so I'm curious about what is missing in the department without that position being filled.
So this is a position that has been brought forward. It's morphed in its explanation. Initially was the division chief of prevention and inspection. It used to be filled by an individual that was with the department before I got here. Part of that role was it was defunded for a couple of reasons. One of which is we weren't going to put somebody in that position right away, and you have me sitting here. I wasn't the fire chief's position wasn't a full-time position before. It is now. Here's the issue that we continue to have, and the reason why it keeps coming back is because of the fact that the need hasn't gone away. We know that inspection is going to continue to be an issue. With development comes additional buildings. We know that there's been some issues that we have had with plan review because we look at plans a little bit different than, let's say, our building inspectors do. Building inspectors absolutely do the right job as far as code enforcement. We look at it from a firefighting standpoint and try to assist in the appropriate placement of certain things like fire suppression, hydrants, alerting devices that are inside the buildings, along with other fire codes that aren't necessarily the priority of development. It's the priority of public safety. So those are things that aren't necessarily happening right now. There's a public safety or a fire prevention code through the state that has changed the way that inspections were conducted and plan review was conducted. And there are some problems with that based on how that was put into place and basically the overtones of it. So this continues to be put back in because of the fact that I have a need for re-inspections. I have a need for code enforcement. There are larger buildings in the city that require somebody with an increased knowledge to be able to address it. Can we do all of this? I'm like any other department, and I know that there's a number of different priorities. I'm just trying to educate as far as what's needed from the fire department. So I don't fault anybody for what they've done with anything with the budget. For the same reason, I hope they don't fault me for bringing it forward and trying to just identify the overall need. And as we get to be larger and able to afford it based on income or our tax base, it's worth the consideration.
Yeah, I agree. I think thanks for speaking to that. My father's a fire protection engineer, so he'd never forgive me if I didn't ask that question. But yeah, I really appreciate the context.
Yeah, no problem. Does anybody need any additional information on that? That was one of the new proposals. It's not in the proposed budget, but I continue to bring it forward because of the need. And actually, it was an alder that told me that continue to bring it forward if that's what you need. So here I am, bringing it forward. The other new initiative is the full-time lieutenant. In the addressing of our overall organizational structure, we had already instituted certain things within our organization to take positions away in order to accommodate these. We did have a budget shortfall last year and the year before. When I started, this was initially something that was on the books as far as being able to be filled. There was some oversight in the way that it was funded. So realistically, we couldn't put it into place. But at the same time, first line leadership, like I had explained before, some of the most important positions that we can have in the department is making sure that we have leadership in each of our stations with every shift. So that's the progression of promoting 3 people from firefighter into the lieutenant position on the career side. What we did in order to do that, we reduced 6 positions on the paid on call side. We used to have 9 paid on call lieutenants. Right now we have 3. We also have 3 career lieutenants and then other command staff. So we had hoped to go from 12 to 9, and right now we're at 6. So I'm just putting that in there as once again a placeholder for the overall need. And then the other thing I put in here, this is something that once again, as we grow and as we get to the point where we need to consider what the city looks like, especially with the town of Madison, there's going to be more buildings. What this allows me to do is 2 things. One, it puts a daytime inspector on. It reduces the exposure for the crews that are conducting the inspections right now. And in addition to that, it creates a light duty position. Right now, if we were to have somebody that would go out on a duty incurred injury, if they did not necessarily have, there's certain things that they can do at City Hall, but there's already stuff that we have here at the fire station that require completion, and this puts a light duty position in place so that we can not only accomplish some of the things that have to happen with the fire department, but it also creates that light duty position so we don't have somebody that is being paid to stay at home. And that is the overall with my presentation.
Thank you, Chief. Any question? No? Tom? No? Okay, so thank you, Chief. We are moving to the next presentation. Our last one for the night is the police department. So we have Chief Brecklin here with us tonight. So it's all yours.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I'll try to keep mine brief since I am the last one, as Julia mentioned. Feel free to ask any questions as either I go through the presentation or when I'm complete here. So, significant accomplishments in 2020. We are currently in the process of implementing a new records management system that is set to go live here on the week of October 19th. That records management system is 15 years old, or our current records management system is 15 years old, and it's a system that we share with 4 other municipalities, that being Sun Prairie, Middleton, Verona, and Monona. So all 5 communities are sharing in the cost of this system in an effort to obviously improve efficiencies across the department and also to reduce the overall taxpayer burden in each of our communities for each department to have their own system. COVID-19 had obviously a significant effect on our department, much like any public safety department and really any employer or department or organization in our country. Businesses, public, private sector, it doesn't matter. COVID's clearly had a huge impact. We spent and continue to spend considerable amounts of time taking a look at the information that's out there, working with Joe and Patrick and others at the county to determine what best practices are for keeping our team safe and inspecting our gear and bringing people back to work. We've kind of adopted the mantra on COVID-19 that this is our guidance today, and in an hour or tomorrow, it could be different. That's been the nature of COVID this year and how much of a time commitment that's put on a lot of things. We did have the opportunity to implement new mission, vision, and value statements. Those were provided to you as a group and the council during the committee of the whole presentation that I provided in July, which went into much more detail about the department, our activities, our accomplishments and efforts than this presentation will certainly go into. We're also in our first year of a 2-year evaluation of 10.5-hour shifts for patrol officers. We have about 1/3 of our police officers are working 4 days on, 4 days off on a 10.5-hour shift. Historically, our department has had all of its patrol officers assigned to 6 days on, 3 days off 8-hour shifts. So far, the feedback has been positive on the 10.5-hour shifts. It does provide some advantages from a health and wellness perspective. And just as importantly, it has a potential for reducing our overtime costs. The officers that are on the 10.5-hour shifts are going to our in-service training, which happens 4 times a year on regularly scheduled off days. That negates the need to then backfill for their positions, typically with overtime on in-service days, since they weren't scheduled to work the road at that time anyway. And then all of the 10.5-hour shifts are structured in such a way to provide overlap with the 8-hour shifts. So that means if there's a non-emergency call that comes in towards the end of any officer's shift, generally speaking, there's going to be an officer who is likely just started their shift an hour or so earlier, or is working past that shift by a couple hours or more, and therefore they can take that call and then not have us pay overtime for an officer to go respond to that call, within the last 15 minutes or so. So we look to continue year 2 of that evaluation in 2021 as well. I didn't list that as a new initiative, but it will continue through 21 as well. Moving into new initiatives for 21, I didn't list the town of Madison, although that I think is certainly going to be a time consumer for us. And, much like any other department, we're looking to continue preparing for that. We are moving to incident-based crime reporting. That is a mandated change by the federal government. We're currently using their uniform crime reports, which have been around for decades. Most municipalities that have transitioned to incident-based crime reporting have realized an increase in the crime that is occurring in their community. That's largely because incident-based crime reporting is viewed to be a more accurate and more complete reporting method than the traditional uniform crime report method that's been around for quite some time. As an example, if we respond to an incident that has 3, offenses that would be reportable, under UCR, only the most serious offense is reported. Under incident-based crime reporting, all 3 reportable offenses are included in the report. So it does give a better picture of the crime that is happening in our community from that perspective. And then obviously another initiative for next year will be a revision of our policy and procedure manual. We discussed that at a recent meeting as well. I appreciate the council's support on that budget amendment to proceed with this manual revision. Changes in the budget, as has been mentioned by other department heads, out-of-state travel was removed for training conferences. Our department has typically done very little out-of-state travel related to training. So you can see our department's amount was about $2,500 for that. We have an increase in gasoline costs due to the number of gallons that are being used. Typically, we try to evaluate that every year or 2 to see where we're at, and we evaluate it again for this budget and believe that it was appropriate to increase the number of gallons that we're estimated to use. We can talk about the hybrid side of things. I think I'm visiting next week to the council meeting, or at least certainly to finance, to talk about some vehicle purchases from this year's budget. On the topic of vehicle purchases, we are beginning the process to implement the vehicle purchase plan, which will transition us away from leasing our vehicles. We have 6 squad leases that will, or 6 squads that will come off of lease late in 2021. The last month's lease payment for all 6 of those vehicles is about $8,400. So there's a decrease in the line item for that. However, there obviously is a buyout for each of those 6 vehicles on the lease. That is approximately $8,500, if my math is any good there. Looking at 49,000 divided by 6 on the fly. Might actually be a little bit less than 8,500, but I'll have to do that math later. So that obviously is an increased cost in our budget. But again, this is a transition plan. over the next several years where cars are coming off of lease and we intend to buy them. When we buy those cars, it's our intent to use them for another 2 years. They're on a 3-year lease typically. So we'll end up using these cars for a total of 5 years, again, all in an effort to better protect the city's investment as well as the investment in vehicles from the taxpayer perspective. One-time purchases removed from this year, 21 to 20, is a decrease in body-worn camera support. We were able to secure a multi-year agreement with our vendor on that, which reduced the overall cost over that multi-year period versus doing singular or single-year agreements each year. So that was something that we had done in order to reduce the overall cost of that program. There was a $15,000 decrease in our equipment account, 335. That was due to a one-time adding of an unmarked patrol vehicle. So that vehicle has been equipped this year. Therefore, we don't have that expense in 21. And then there's a $5,500 decrease in our communications account for our communications center, our dispatch center. We are currently in the process of implementing wireless headset technology in our dispatch center as we speak. There's also been some cleanup done to better classify expenditures related to training and equipment. Account number 325, which is our training account. We moved training facility user fees from account 383 to this account as it is a training cost. Account 340, some operating expenses to include taser cartridges, less lethal beanbag rounds, ammunition, and OC spray have all been moved to that account. Account 355, which is an equipment account, also had items moved to it, firearms, tasers, as well as the related parts and supplies, simunitions, active shooter, and airsoft training equipment made up that dollar amount there. And then account 383, the money that was in that account for 2020, $41,200 has been completely moved to other accounts that I just mentioned above. And then finally, the other change moving forward is another housekeeping matter. In previous years, including this year, we've had our uniform allowance, which is a contractual issue through our collective bargaining agreement for our staff, and all other uniforms and protective gear that the department purchases in one account. We are going to split that account into 2 different accounts. One will be specifically for uniform allowance that is contractually obligated, and the second will be for the protective gear and uniforms that the department provides its staff. So I believe that covers the highlights of the budget. Any questions for me?
Any question for, oh, Gabriela has a question.
Thanks, Chief. That was fantastic. So the policy manual update is happening this year or this coming year, but that money is allocated from this cost savings due to COVID from this year. Is that correct?
Yes, we reallocated money from the 2020 budget that will pay for the cost of that revision. We're currently reviewing the contract with the vendor. The city attorney is taking a look at that right now. Once that contract is signed, we intend to pay for the services using 2020 budget funds.
Great. And then my understanding with that contract is that we will eventually need to pay an annual maintenance fee or update fee that, if I recall correctly, it's something in the range of 17,000. Do you have any idea if that would start in 2022 or at what point that starts for us?
Yes, your recollection is very good. It is about $17,000 for ongoing updates to those policies. The access to the platform that will store the policies as well as distribute the policies and provide comprehension quizzes, if you will, or questions to our staff. And then it will also go towards providing regular training bulletins related to those policies that were implemented. And yes, that fee is anticipated to begin in 2022.
Got it. And then a couple of questions in regards to the police cars. So I was just taking a look, it looks like there's 208,000 in the CIP for purchasing of vehicles. And it sounds like those vehicles that we're purchasing this coming year will all be purchasing the leased vehicles, just like adopting them as actual vehicles. Is there any new vehicles being purchased in 2021?
I'd have to double check that, but I think there may be a replacement vehicle in there. I'd have to look at the CIP plan for that. I don't know how readily available. Misty might have that. If you want that question tonight, we can certainly take a look at that. But it would come out of capital, not operating, is where that would come from. So moving forward, we do not intend to lease any additional vehicles. So as these leases that were signed over the last several years start to expire, that's when we'll buy those cars. Again, we'll run those cars for a couple more years and then look to buy new cars to replace them at that point in time.
Great. And I would love to talk, you said you're going to come to a council meeting soon. I would love to have a conversation about the potential for hybrid police vehicles. But I'm sure you know I'm interested in that. So we can put a pin in that for now. But I am curious about, so it according to the budget, it's about $100,000 for gasoline budgeted for 2021. And that's assuming a $2.71 per gallon amount. And this is out to you or to Misty. Are we confident that gasoline rate is going to stay throughout 2021? Or, I mean, is that a risky estimate, or is it you consider that a safe estimate?
So that's the estimate we used across the city, and it's actually the same as we used for the budget for 2020. So as you know, gas prices are so volatile. It's hard to know exactly what it is. Right now, it's clearly well under that 271, but it wouldn't surprise me too much if it jumped back up. So we kind of just kept the same amount.
Got it. Okay.
One thing too, Alder Gerhardt, and perhaps Misty can clarify this. We are in the process of transitioning to a fleet card for fuel purchasing, which does have the potential to reduce our fuel costs that we're currently paying right now. So that is something that we will likely have implemented prior to the end of this year.
Great. Thank you all so much. That's all for now.
Okay, next in the chat is Tom.
Thanks, Chief. I just have two quick questions. The first one, and I'm sure you already looked at this. I know you have. So I'm an officer on the street, and there's a possible murder case, and I respond to the case. I respond to the call, and now I'm up against my 10.5 hours. But I don't want to move any evidence or do anything, and there's a 12-hour limit on how many hours I can work. At least this could have changed. It could have changed, but obviously people's awareness goes down. They get stressed, it goes down. How did you guys look at that as far as removing an officer from a serious scene up against that time limit?
So, yeah, in any case where officers are working, 12 hours, that's typically where we try to cap the length of a shift. Obviously, there are situations, a critical incident such as a homicide is an all hands on deck situation in most regards, although we do try to reserve some folks in reserve to obviously come in and cover the road for the next shift, and also to provide operational relief for the staff that's investigating a critical incident or involved in a critical incident. So yes, we have looked at that, and yes, we'll continue to always evaluate each situation as it occurs and move people out of an on-duty status as reasonably soon as possible. I will add that I should have done this earlier, that while I do believe we have a need for additional staff in the police department, I did not include any new proposals in this year's budget requesting that staff. I am trying to finalize a staffing plan that will cover the next 5 years to provide a much better overall picture of the need in the police department. So look for that coming out at some point in the future here to hopefully help provide some measure of information and guidance moving forward on police department need.
Yeah, the second one, you picked my brain. You definitely took it out of my brain. So you did not put any officers or detectives in this budget for this year? None?
Correct. I did not request anyone this year.
Next is Randy.
Yes, just one question on looking at the 2021 personnel summary. Of course, I see the hours within the time and so forth. There is no overtime hours. Is it typical for police officers not to work overtime? You're not budgeting for it? Is it somewhere else, or am I just missing it?
So overtime is budgeted. I believe it's a budget at about $210,000 a year is what we budget for overtime. And the reason why nothing is listed there is because it's hard to predict which officers or which personnel are going to work the overtime. And a lot of it falls upon what's happening on any given shift, any given day, at any given time, how many critical incidents we respond to, you know, if there's a late call that requires multiple officers, you know, a domestic or robbery or something like that. So it'd be really, really hard to classify that, you know, at least from a prediction standpoint. If we could predict those sorts of things, I probably wouldn't be in this business. I'd be on a circuit somewhere helping predict all sorts of things.
Okay, and since this is fairly new to me, it is, you have incorporated those hours into the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure Misty could probably pull that up and point that out. That's the hours, correct, Misty?
Correct. It's the hours that are there. So rather than being by officer, all those kind of miscellaneous wage payments are all included at the end of the personnel summary. So the 3,700 hours, just shy of that. And then I use an average rate for the officers to determine the dollar amount.
Am I correct in it? It's about 210,000, Misty?
I can get there too. This will take a little longer.
I don't know how you navigate these spreadsheets.
Just a bunch of numbers. Here we go. So overtime is the second line. Close, 228,000.
Okay.
It's just the actual overtime payment, and then the benefits would be incorporated in the other, like the FICA and the retirement payments connected with overtime would be included in those other benefit lines.
Okay, I was just looking at the personnel summary. I didn't see that number, but that's fine. I understand. Thank you.
I have a question about this. So we have $229,000. So I assuming that we have this every year. We have around $200,000 in overtime. And you mentioned that it's an equivalent of 3,670 hours. So on average, it's like a $62 an hour we're paying. My question is, if we are having this huge amount of overtime every year, is it not more efficient to hire 2 additional police officers for that amount?
Well, that could be one strategy that might help reduce some overtime depending on how they were deployed. The challenge is and actually Misty's showing our overtime expenditures for the last several years, and you can see what the 5-year average actually is. So the challenge is, again, is what happens on any given day with your staffing. And, you know, typically when you staff a police department, if you were going to add one more person to work 24 hours a day, in our situation, using an 8-hour shift as an example, Well, that means I need 3 people to cover each and every day to get 1 more police officer on the street. Now, that is irrespective of days off, regular days off, training days, sick days, vacation days, and all of those sorts of things. So an item like what's called a shift relief factor is used to determine that. And you'd probably be looking at, roughly 4 or 5 people necessary to actually increase the staffing by 1 person every single day. So now, could you do that and would it have a positive impact on overtime? It's possible. I don't know the answer to that question because I can't always predict when we're having to pay overtime. I don't know who goes out on FMLA. I don't know who goes out on a military deployment. I don't know when the homicide or the shots fired or the robbery is going to occur, unfortunately. So if we would like to consider adding to our department, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to adding personnel to the department by any stretch of the imagination. And I know that our folks would appreciate some additional personnel in order to help shoulder the load. But I don't want to give any sort of false information that says, yeah, if you add us another body or 2, then, our overtime costs are going to go down significantly. Could it happen? And would it be ideal? Yes, absolutely. And I think, hopefully what we see with this 10.5-hour shift evaluation over the next couple of years is a better look at what those overtime expenses might be. I shouldn't even say it. I'm knocking on wood right now, but we just checked where we were at in our overtime use so far this year compared to what's budgeted, and we're just a shade over, or we're projected to be just a shade over what's been budgeted for the year, which, as you can see in past years, it's been exceeded by 100,000 or more. And right now, I think, we're trending to be less than $25,000 or $20,000 over based on projections at this point in time.
I'd like to jump in for a moment real quick because I'm sure some of you are asking why we're budgeting so much less than if our average over the 5 years is the 308,000. And the reason for that is we budget to be fully staffed, but then that overtime happens a lot of the time when we have a vacancy. So there'll be a savings in the vacancy line, but that will be reallocated to overtime.
Okay, I have another question let me see. In the account 340, there is kind of like a $28,000 increase for ammunition and less lethal options. So how often do you replenish your, ammunition? Like you do it like every 2 years, you know what I mean? Why do you need to buy so much this in 2021?
So that's not actually an increase. That's just a transfer from the account 383. So we moved.
83?
Yes. So that account was decreased to 0.
383?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay.
So previously, those expenditures or those items would have been purchased out of that account.
Okay.
And that account did not accurately represent what those expenses actually were. So to answer your question is the vast majority of our expenditure related to ammunition is for our training purposes and our annual qualification that's required by the state of Wisconsin. So we do an annual ammunition order. And one of the things that we always have to be concerned about and aware of is the volatility of price, as well as the lead times for ammunition, depending on what sorts of conflicts might be happening in our world. When there was significant activity in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was not uncommon for us to have volatile pricing throughout the year and year to year. And also it was not uncommon for us to wait upwards of a year for an order of ammunition to be delivered to the police department because of the priority the military was receiving. So that's where that comes from. As far as other things like taser cartridges and beanbag rounds, Very few of those are actually deployed during the course of duty. The vast majority of those supplies are used for annual certification. We do an annual certification on our less lethal items, to the beanbag rounds and taser specifically. And that requires our staff to not only have some classroom training during that certification, but also to physically deploy those rounds or cartridges in a training setting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other question? 1, 2, 3, we're done. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
So, okay, we have reached the end of the agenda for tonight. So tomorrow we are gonna have a recess until tomorrow, 6 o'clock. So, so do I need a motion to adjourn?
Nope, you need a motion to recess from one of the finance committee members.
Okay, so I need a motion to recess.
I move to recess.
For clarity, that's until 6 p.m. tomorrow.
Great, I move to recess until 6 p.m. tomorrow, September 30th.
Thank you.
Yes, I need a second.
No, you don't. You only have.
No? Oh, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays, the motion carries. So good evening, everyone, and see you tomorrow.